They call me Captain Rebel, and I've walked this earth for 65 years now, with 30 of those years spent carrying a secret that's been eating through me like acid-dissolving steel from the inside out. I gave 24 years of my life to the United States Navy and climbed all the way up to commander, and somewhere down in my basement, there's a box full of medals gathering dust, but none of that means anything anymore when I think about what I witnessed during an official mission in 1994 that never officially happened according to any record you'll ever find. You need to understand something right from the start, and that's that I'm not some paranoid conspiracy theorist who sees unidentified flying objects in every cloud formation. I'm just an ordinary man who was born and raised in Houston, who believes in doing right by God and country and family, who followed every order given to me, who did my job without complaint, and who kept silent when the men in charge told me to keep silent. But sitting here on my porch in Tennessee with lung cancer that the doctors say will probably give me 6 months at most, I figure some truths are just too important to take with you to the grave. When we returned from that mission, they sat all of us down in a secure room and made us sign papers that weren't your standard military confidentiality forms. These were contracts that made one thing crystal clear, and that thing was if you talk, you don't just pay the price yourself, but your wife pays it too, and your kids pay it, and your grandkids pay it. They never directly stated they would hurt your family, but they chose their words so carefully and so deliberately that you knew exactly what they meant without them having to spell it out. For years afterward, I had nightmares that would wake me up drenched in sweat with my wife Rachel shaking me awake, asking what was wrong, and I could never tell her the truth. How do you explain to someone you love that the world she thinks she knows is fundamentally built on lies? I lost 3 friends from that mission in the first few years after we got back to the surface. Officer Thomas Jenkins supposedly hanged himself in his garage. Technician David Rodriguez died in a car accident on a perfectly straight road in broad daylight with perfect visibility. Specialist diver James Cooper just vanished one day and they never found his body. You can call it coincidence if you want, but when you've signed those papers and when you've looked into the eyes of the men handing you that pen, you know damn well it's not coincidence at all. So why am I talking now after 3 decades of silence? Simple answer is that I'm dying anyway, and the cancer is going to get me before they have a chance to silence me themselves. Rachel passed away 3 years ago. My kids are grown adults now living their own lives. And honestly, after carrying this weight for so long, I'd rather die knowing I tried to do the right thing than die with this secret still locked inside me. What I'm about to tell you isn't science fiction or fantasy or the delusions of a dying man. This is what I saw with my own 2 eyes 11,000 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean at a location that doesn't exist on any official map you'll ever see. This is the real reason we spend billions of dollars trying to colonize Mars, while we've barely explored 5% of our own oceans. It was March of 1994, and I was stationed at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, doing what I thought would be my last tour before retirement. At 39 years old, I had seen enough action in the Gulf and was ready for a quieter life with my family. Then, on a Tuesday morning, everything changed in an instant. I got orders to report immediately to Admiral Hutchinson's office, and when I walked in, there were 3 men in identical black suits standing behind the Admiral's desk. No uniforms, no name tags, no insignia of any kind, just dark suits and eyes that looked right through you. Admiral Hutchinson didn't waste any time with pleasantries. Commander Sullivan, he said, you've been selected for an operation of critical importance to national security, and you have exactly 30 seconds to accept or decline this assignment. If you decline, this conversation never happened, and you go back to your regular duties. If you accept, your life changes forever. What's your answer? 30 seconds to make a decision that would alter the entire trajectory of my existence, and not even enough time to ask what the hell this was about. I accept, sir, I said. The Admiral nodded once, and one of the suits opened a briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. You deploy in 48 hours, he said. South Pacific location classified. Mission objective classified. You'll be part of a 12-man team. You cannot tell anyone, including your family, where you're going or what you're doing. If anyone asks, you're on routine training exercises. Is that clear? The next 48 hours were surreal in a way I still can't fully describe. I had to lie to Rachel for the first time in 17 years of marriage. She smiled and kissed me goodbye and told me to be careful out there, and she had no idea that the man who came back wouldn't really be the same man who left. The night before deployment, I opened the folder they'd given me. Inside were dossiers on the other 11 men who'd be joining me. Every single one of us was highly experienced in our fields. We had sonar experts, deep water divers, communication specialists, a marine geologist, and a biologist. But what struck me as strange was something else entirely. None of us had more than 2 children. All our kids were adults already. None of us had living parents anymore. Someone had chosen us very carefully, looking for men with minimal family complications. Men who could disappear without too many people asking uncomfortable questions. We assembled at 0400 hours at an isolated pier far from the main base. No witnesses, no ceremony, just 12 confused men, and those men in suits watching us. One of them handed each of us a small device about the size of a wristwatch. Wear this at all times, he said. It monitors your vital signs, and if they stop unexpectedly, certain measures will be taken to protect the operation and your families. It was a threat disguised as standard procedure, and we all understood it perfectly. The briefing happened in a concrete room underneath the pier, and it lasted exactly 7 minutes. That's all it took to change everything I thought I knew about the world. The suit who called himself director showed us one single image on a projector screen. It was a sonar reading from the ocean floor, showing structures down there. Massive, geometric, impossible structures that shouldn't exist. Gentlemen, he said, you're going to a location 11,000 meters below sea level. You will observe and document what you find down there. What you're about to see has no conventional explanation whatsoever. Some of you will question your sanity when you see it. Others will question everything you've ever believed about reality. But one thing is absolutely certain, and that's that when you return, if you return, nothing will ever be the same for you again. He clicked off the projector and the room went dark. You board in 10 minutes, he said. God be with you, because you'll need him down there in the deep. Walking down that pier toward the submarine doctor, Benjamin Foster, the biologist, whispered to me, Commander, do you have any idea what we're getting into here? I told him the honest truth, which was no clue, Doc, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. The submarine was docked at the end of the pier, and when I first laid eyes on it, I knew right away something wasn't right about it. I'd worked around submarines my entire adult life and served on several of them. This thing wasn't like any of them. It was painted in absolute black, the kind of black that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. No hull numbers, no insignia, no flag. The shape wasn't right either, because most subs have that hard, angular military look to them. This one was smooth, almost curved, like something organic rather than mechanical. When I got close enough to touch it, the hull had no visible rivets, no welds, no seams at all, just one continuous surface that was smooth as glass but strangely warm to the touch. The captain was waiting at the hatch, dressed in a standard Navy uniform, but it had no name tape, no rank insignia, nothing identifying about it at all. Welcome aboard, DSV Poseidon, he said. Stow your gear, and we depart in 15 minutes. The interior made even less sense than the exterior. The corridors were lit by soft blue lights that didn't seem to come from any actual light fixtures I could identify. Everything was smooth with rounded corners instead of the sharp angles you'd expect. When I touched a wall, it felt warm and slightly spongy instead of cold metal. Nothing like what you'd expect from a submarine hull. One of the technicians, a guy named Ramirez, touched the wall and muttered, "This ain't steel, so what the hell is this thing made of?" Nobody answered him because nobody knew the answer. I felt the sub start to move, but there was no sound at all, which was completely wrong. On every submarine I'd ever been on, you hear the engines, you feel the vibration through the deck plates. This had none of that, just a gentle sensation of movement like we were floating on air. I headed to the control room to see what was happening, The controls weren't the usual panels and switches I was familiar with. Everything was digital touchscreens with interfaces that looked like something out of science fiction. The captain and his officers were operating the submarine with smooth finger movements across glowing screens. "How does this thing work?" I asked one of the officers. "The propulsion system uses magnetohydrodynamics," he explained. "Water is expelled through electromagnetic fields, so it's completely silent and completely undetectable by standard sonar systems." "When was this built?" I asked him. The officer gave me a sad smile and said, "That's not the right question, Commander. The right question isn't when it was built, but where it was built and by whom. We spent the first 3 days just descending straight down into the black at a steady rate. We'll reach full depth in 72 hours, they told me. 72 hours of continuous descent into darkness. The pressure down there is beyond human comprehension, enough to crush a regular submarine like an empty beer can." On the second day down, Dr. Foster came looking for me with worry written all over his face. "Commander, you need to see something," he said. He pointed at a monitor showing readings from outside the hull. "We're at 6,000 meters right now, and at this depth, there shouldn't be any complex life forms at all, but look at this." He zoomed in on a feed from one of the external cameras, and there were creatures out there in the darkness. Big ones with shapes that didn't make biological sense, swimming through the total blackness. "None of this should be possible," he whispered, "and there's something else you need to know. They're following us and have been for hours now." Maybe a dozen creatures, he continued, each about the size of a car, maintaining perfect formation around our submarine like an escort. They weren't attacking or showing any aggression, just watching us and keeping pace with our descent. "Since when?" I asked. "Since we passed 5,000 meters, he answered. "It's like they're escorting us somewhere, or maybe herding us toward something." On the third day of descent, something changed in the atmosphere, and every man on that submarine felt it in his bones. There was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. We were at 9,500 meters now, which is deeper than Mount Everest is tall, and the darkness outside the hull was absolute and complete. I was in the control room when it happened. Lucas Peterson, the sonar operator, suddenly sat up straight in his chair like he'd been shocked. "Sir, I'm getting something on the passive array," he said. "Multiple contacts, very large, but they're not moving like anything I've ever seen before in my career." Captain Reynolds moved behind Peterson's station. "Show me," he ordered. What I saw on that screen made my blood run cold in my veins. There were returns out there in the deep. Dozens of them arranged in a perfect grid pattern with perfect spacing and perfect alignment, stretching for miles in every direction. "That's not possible," Reynolds muttered under his breath. "Nothing natural forms patterns like that with such precision." "These aren't solid objects," Sir Peterson said. "The sonar is passing through them, but there's definitely something there creating the return. It's like they're made of energy or something I've never encountered. I've never seen a our return like this in 15 years of operating these systems." "Doctor?" Foster stared at the screen with his mouth slightly open. "Those are structures," he said. "Some kind of installations down there, and we're headed right toward them." Reynolds picked up the internal phone. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced. "We are approaching the target zone. Everyone to their stations immediately." As we continued to descend, the sonar contacts grew stronger and more defined. They were rising up from the ocean floor like towers, hundreds of them, some reaching up thousands of meters from the bottom, and they were active in some way. The sonar showed them pulsing and vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't exist underwater. Sir Peterson said, and his voice was nervous now, "I'm picking up acoustics. These things are generating sound, and lots of it. The frequency patterns are organized and structured almost like a language. They're communicating with each other or with something. We all felt it then. Something down there wasn't just present in the water. It was aware of us and our presence." Then the lights flickered throughout the entire submarine. The DSV Poseidon systems had been rock solid for 3 days straight. But now the lights dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again. The monitors showed static before clearing back to normal. "What the hell was that?" I asked. Emma Carter, one of the engineers, spoke up. Sir, something just sent an electromagnetic pulse through the water strong enough to interfere with our systems. The only things that generate EMP are nuclear detonations or highly advanced technology," Reynolds finished her thought. "Which means whatever's down there isn't natural at all, and it knows we're here." As if in direct response to his words, every screen in the control room suddenly went black. Then they came back on, but they weren't showing our data anymore. They were showing an image that was the same on every single screen. It looked like a symbol of some kind, geometric and complex and rotating slowly. It hurt to look at it for too long, like it was doing something to your eyes or brain. "Turn it off," Reynolds ordered. "Kill all external inputs immediately." Carter worked frantically at her station. "Sir, I can't," she said. "We're locked out of our own systems. Whatever's transmitting this signal, it's overriding everything we have." Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The screens went back to normal. Our data returned. We'd just been sent a message, and it was a demonstration of power. Something down there had reached up through 10,000 meters of ocean and casually taken control of our most advanced submarine like it was a child's toy. Sir Peterson said quietly, "The acoustic signals have changed. They're getting louder and more frequent, and I think they're coming from directly below us now." Reynolds stood silent for a long moment. "Continue descent," he finally said. "Proceed as planned. But if I give the order to surface, we turn around immediately without question." "Understood." The last 1,500 meters took 2 hours. 2 hours of the longest silence I've ever experienced in my life. Nobody talked. Nobody made unnecessary noise. We just watched the depth gauge slowly count down as we sank towards something that was waiting for us. Something that had been down there long before humans ever existed on this planet. At 10,800 meters, I saw Dr. Foster cross himself and whisper what looked like a prayer. The depth gauge hit 11,000 meters. "Bottom coming up," Peterson announced. 200 meters, 150, 100. "Cut all unnecessary lighting," Reynolds ordered. "Switch external cameras to maximum gain. Let's see what's down here waiting for us." The control room lights dimmed to red emergency lighting. On the main screen, the external camera feeds came online one by one. At first, there was nothing but absolute black emptiness. Then our lights hit something, and I heard someone gasp out loud. We weren't looking at the ocean floor covered in sediment. We were looking at something built by intelligent beings, something massive beyond comprehension, something that had no business being 11,000 meters under the Pacific Ocean. And somewhere in that structure, lights began to turn on one by one like a city, waking up from sleep, responding to our presence. I've tried for 30 years to find the right words to describe what we saw down there, but human language wasn't designed for it. The structure stretched out in every direction as far as our lights could reach, and probably far beyond that. It wasn't built from stone or metal or anything we recognized from our experience. The material looked almost crystalline, but it moved and shifted like it was breathing or alive. The surfaces caught our lights and bent them in impossible ways, creating colors I'd never seen before in nature, blues that were too blue, greens that actually hurt to look at. The architecture was all wrong by every rule of engineering I'd ever learned. Towers rose at angles that should have been structurally impossible without collapsing. Bridges connected buildings without any visible supports underneath them. Doorways and windows were shaped like nothing made for human proportions or human use. Some were triangular, some were circular, some were shapes that geometry doesn't have names for, and the scale was massive beyond belief. Structures easily 1,000 feet tall, maybe more, rising from the ocean floor. "My God," Dr. Foster whispered, "this is a city, an entire city down here." "How old do you think this is?" I asked him. He shook his head slowly. "Commander, based on the tectonic data for this region, we're looking at an area that's been underwater for at least 60 million years. Maybe longer. So this was built before humans existed," I said. "Before mammals existed," he corrected me. "This predates the dinosaurs by a significant margin. Whatever built this was here long before anything we'd recognize as civilization on the surface." Reynolds spoke into the intercom. "All hands," he said. "We have visual confirmation of structures at depth. Maintain station keeping. No one approaches the hull windows without my authorization." He looked at me. Commander, get your team ready. We're going to do a slow survey of the area. I want every sensor recording and every camera running continuously. Over the next hour, we circled the city at about 500 meters distance, keeping our speed slow and steady. There were hundreds of buildings down there, maybe thousands. Some rose from the ocean floor in the traditional way. Others seemed to hang suspended in the water with no visible support or foundation. And those lights kept turning on as we passed, like the city was tracking our movement and acknowledging our presence. Sir Peterson called out, "I'm picking up those acoustic signals again, and they're much stronger now. And there's something else. The pattern is responding to us. Every time we change course, the signal pattern changes with us. Can you make out any pattern to it?" Reynolds asked. Peterson ran the signals through every analysis program we had available. "It's definitely structured," he said. "Repeated sequences with variations on themes like music. If I didn't know better, I'd say this was actually music of some kind, but music doesn't carry information density like this. Each pulse contains layers of data that would take our computers hours to decode, and they're generating hundreds of these pulses per second. So what you're telling me," I said, "is that whatever's down here has information technology that makes ours look like smoke signals." "That's exactly what I'm telling you, sir," he replied. Then one of the buildings directly ahead of us started to change right before our eyes. The crystalline material began to flow like liquid and reshape itself. Within minutes, a portion of the wall had formed something that looked exactly like a docking port, and it was precisely the right size for our submarine. "They're inviting us in, Doctor," Foster said with awe in his voice. "They want us to dock with their structure." "No," Reynolds said immediately and firmly. "Absolutely not. We observe from a distance only." But even as he spoke, our controls started to act up and malfunction. The submarine began moving on its own, steering directly toward that docking port without any input from us. Carter frantically worked her station with increasing panic. "Sir, we've lost helm control," she reported. "We're being pulled in by something." "Override it," Reynolds barked. "Switch to manual backup systems immediately." "Already tried, sir," she said. "Nothing's responding to our commands. Whatever's controlling our boat isn't using our systems to do it." We all watched helplessly as the DSV Poseidon glided smoothly toward the docking port like we were on rails. Reynolds's hand hovered over the emergency surface blow controls, but we all knew if he triggered it now at this depth, the sudden pressure change could kill us all instantly. We were completely trapped. The docking port grew larger and larger on our screens as we approached. When we were about 10 meters away, I could see it was lined with that strange material, and it was glowing and pulsing with light that seemed almost alive and organic. Our submarine slid into the port as smoothly as a key sliding into a lock. We felt a gentle bump and then heard sounds of something sealing around our hull, creating an airtight connection. Sir Carter said, and her voice was shaking badly. "External pressure is dropping rapidly. There's atmosphere being pumped into the docking chamber around us. They're creating an airlock for us." Reynolds stood frozen in place. We were 11,000 meters under the ocean, inside a structure that shouldn't exist according to everything we knew. Built by something that predated human civilization by millions of years. "Atmospheric composition reading is breathable," Carter reported while checking her instruments. 78% nitrogen. 21% oxygen, standard pressure matching sea level. It's identical to surface atmosphere. They're making it comfortable for us to go outside. A sound echoed through the hull then. Someone or something was knocking on our submarine from the outside. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Polite, patient, waiting for us to answer. "What do we do, sir?" I asked Reynolds. He stood there for a long moment, just breathing and thinking. Finally, he said, "We didn't come all this way to sit in the boat like cowards. Suit up, we're going outside to meet them, but nobody goes armed. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead, and there's nothing we could do about it anyway." As I went to get my gear, my hands were shaking badly. In about 20 minutes, I was going to make contact with whatever built this city, something that had been down here in the dark for longer than I could comprehend. I thought about Rachel back home waiting for me, about my kids living their lives, about the sun and sky and all the normal things I might never see again, Reynolds's voice came over the intercom. "All hands prepare for external contact," he announced. "Remember your training, remember your duty. Everything we do down here matters for the future of humanity." I took a deep breath and headed for the airlock. Whatever was waiting outside that hatch was about to change human history forever. 6 of us suited up for the exterior contact: myself, Captain Reynolds, Dr. Foster, Peterson, Carter, and Daniel Harris, a communications specialist. We wore modified deep sea suits, but honestly they felt like a formality more than actual protection. If the pressure returned to normal depth, these suits would buy us maybe 30 seconds before we were crushed. We were completely at their mercy, and we all knew it. Standing in the airlock, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. Reynolds looked at each of us in turn. "Whatever happens out there, we stay together," he said. "Nobody wanders off. Nobody touches anything unless I give the explicit okay. We're guests here, uninvited ones at that. Let's be respectful and careful." The outer hatch began to open with a hiss. There was a sound of equalizing pressure, and then light flooded in. Not harsh white light, but that strange shifting illumination we'd seen from inside the submarine. Blues and greens and colors that didn't quite fit in the spectrum I knew from a lifetime of experience. The hatch swung fully open, and we stepped out onto a platform that hadn't been there before we docked. The platform was solid beneath our feet, made of that crystalline material. It had formed perfectly to catch us as we exited, like the city itself was adapting in real time to accommodate us and our needs. Around us, the chamber was massive, easily 100 feet in every direction. The walls glowed with bioluminescence, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, and the air smelled clean, like ocean spray and ozone and something ancient. "Atmospheric readings are still good," Carter said while checking her wrist monitor, "but this doesn't make sense. We're at 11,000 meters depth. The pressure differential should require walls 100 feet thick to contain this atmosphere. These walls are maybe 6 inches thick at most. Their material science is beyond ours, Doctor," Foster said softly, "way beyond anything we can do or even understand." Then we saw them and everything changed. 3 figures emerged from an opening in the far wall that simply appeared as the wall flowed aside like water. They moved toward us with a grace that was almost hypnotic. Gliding more than walking, they were tall, maybe 7 feet, with bodies that were humanoid but elongated and streamlined. Their skin was a pale blue-gray that seemed to shift in the light, almost translucent in places. I could see what might have been circulatory systems underneath, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Their limbs were long and elegant, ending in hands with 6 fingers instead of 5. But it was their faces that really got me. They had 2 large eyes, solid black with no visible pupils, taking up maybe a third of their face. No nose that I could see, just small slits that opened and closed rhythmically, and the mouth was barely visible, a thin line. The moment I looked into those black eyes, I felt something in my head, not words exactly, but concepts, feelings, images, like someone had opened a door directly into my mind and was placing thoughts there gently and carefully. "They're telepathic, Doctor." Foster spoke first, and his voice was shaking. "They're communicating directly with our minds without speaking." One of the beings stepped forward, and I forced myself not to step back. The presence in my mind grew stronger and more focused, and then I understood, not words but meaning, welcome, observation, curiosity. Ancient patience, they'd been waiting for us, not for this specific visit, but for us as a species, waiting for us to develop enough technology to finally make it down here to meet them face to face. The being raised one of its long hands with the palm facing us. A gesture of greeting maybe, or peace. Reynolds hesitated for just a moment, then slowly raised his own hand in response. The being's mouth curved slightly upward. A smile. The feeling I got in my mind was unmistakable. Approval, satisfaction, then the being turned and moved back toward the opening it had come from. It paused to look back at us. The meaning was absolutely clear. "Follow me." Reynolds looked at each of us, then nodded once. We followed. The opening led to a corridor that seemed to stretch on forever into the distance. The walls were covered in patterns that might have been writing or art or both. They moved and shifted as we passed, responding to our presence. At regular intervals, there were what I can only describe as windows, though they didn't look out onto water. They showed other places, other chambers in the city. Commander Peterson whispered, "My pressure gauge is still showing surface pressure." But that's not possible unless we're somehow not where we think we are. We entered a larger chamber and I stopped dead in my tracks. It was some kind of observation hall with what looked like viewing screens covering every wall from floor to ceiling. Except they were showing real-time images from all over the ocean. I recognized the coast of California on one screen, a submarine on another, ships crossing the Atlantic, coral reefs teeming with life. They were watching everything that happened in the ocean. The entire ocean was under their observation and had been for who knows how long. One of the beings approached a wall and touched it with one long finger. The images changed immediately. Now they were showing things I didn't recognize at first. Then I realized what I was seeing. Historical footage, ancient ships, wooden vessels from hundreds of years ago sinking to the bottom. The Titanic sliding beneath the waves, submarines from World War II, and older things, much older, ships that looked Roman, Greek, even older civilizations I couldn't identify, all recorded, all preserved in their archives. "They've been watching us," Carter said quietly. "The whole time humans have been sailing the oceans, they've been down here watching and recording everything we do." The being turned to face us directly. The telepathic communication intensified suddenly. And I wasn't just receiving vague feelings anymore. I was seeing clear images, concepts, a narrative. They were telling us their story. They had been here for millions of years, long before the continents had their current shapes. Before humans had even evolved from our ancestors, they had built their cities in the deep places where the pressure and cold kept them safe from the violent surface world above. They had watched as life crawled out of the sea onto land. As mammals evolved and spread, as primitive humans appeared and began their journey, they had observed everything that happened on the surface, interfered with nothing, but they were concerned now, and that concern was growing. The images shifted to show human activities in the modern era, oil drilling platforms reaching deeper and deeper into the ocean, submarines probing farther into the abyss, sonar that disrupted their communications and hurt their people, pollution that poisoned their waters and killed their ecosystems, and nuclear weapons, submarines carrying missiles with the power to destroy everything. They showed us what those weapons would do if used, not just to humans on the surface, but to the entire ocean ecosystem. Their entire civilization could be destroyed by our conflicts and our wars. "They're afraid of us," I said out loud, and immediately felt confirmation from the being in my mind. "Jesus Christ," Peterson whispered, "we've got them scared of what we might do. Can you blame them, Doctor?" Foster replied quietly, "We've only known about deep-sea life for 150 years, and we've already started strip mining the ocean floor and dumping toxic waste. To them, we must look like destructive children playing with matches." The being touched the wall again with purpose. Now they were showing us something different. Other cities like this one scattered across the ocean floors all over the world. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, the Mariana Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. A whole civilization that had existed alongside humanity, completely hidden in the depths. And then the being showed us something that made my blood run cold in my veins. Images of other humans like us coming down here in previous decades. Different submarines, different people, but the same mission. We weren't the first team to make contact. There had been others before us. British expeditions in the 1950s, Soviet missions in the 1970s. The message was clear as day. Every major power knew about this place and about them. And everyone had agreed to keep it secret from their populations. "That's why we're really here," Reynolds said quietly, with realization dawning. "Not to discover them. They've already been discovered decades ago. We're here to confirm that the agreement is still in place and being honored." The being looked at us with those huge black eyes, and I felt something like sadness coming from it. They didn't want conflict with us. They had no interest in our surface world. They just wanted to be left alone in the deep places where they'd always lived. but they were making it clear that if we pushed too far into their territory, if we threatened their survival, they had the technology to respond and defend themselves. The same technology that had casually taken control of our submarine could do a lot worse if they chose to use it. "We understand," Reynolds said out loud. "We'll make sure the people who need to know are reminded of the boundaries. No deep drilling in certain designated areas. No weapons testing in your zones. You stay hidden in the depths." We stay on the surface, and everyone survives. The being inclined its head slightly in acknowledgement. Agreement, relief, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Hope maybe, but I also felt a warning. A clear, unmistakable warning. If we broke the agreement, if we pushed too far into their territory, the oceans cover 71% of Earth's surface, and they controlled it all. Every drop. We were the minority here living on rocky islands in the middle of their world. And it would be very easy for them to remind us of that fact in devastating ways. We spent another hour in that city seeing wonders I still can't fully describe even after 3 decades. Technology that looked like art. Art that functioned as technology. Beings going about their lives in a civilization that had existed longer than human recorded history. When we finally returned to our submarine, when the docking port released us and we began our slow ascent back to the surface. None of us spoke for hours. We just learned that humanity wasn't alone on this planet, had never been alone, and that our entire understanding of Earth's history was fundamentally incomplete and wrong. The journey back up was completely different from the descent. Going up, we were just numb, shell-shocked, trying to process what we'd seen, trying to figure out how to live with knowledge that big and that world-changing. I spent most of the first day in my quarters just lying on my bunk. My mind kept replaying everything, those black eyes staring into my soul, the telepathic connection, the images of their history stretching back millions of years. Dr. Foster came to find me on the second day up. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. "Commander, I need to talk to someone about this, or I'm going to lose my mind," he said. He pulled out his notes. "The evolutionary biology alone is impossible. Those beings shouldn't exist according to everything we know. Everything we know says intelligence can't evolve at those pressures and in that environment. But they're not just intelligent, they're more advanced than us by a lot. So our science is wrong," I said, "or incomplete," he replied. "We've only been looking at 5% of the biosphere. What if everything we think we know about evolution is based on incomplete data? What if the deep ocean has its own evolutionary path we know nothing about? They've been around a lot longer than us," I said. "Millions of years. While our ancestors were still in the trees, they were already building cities and developing technology." Dr. Foster nodded slowly. "And that's what terrifies me," he said. "They're that old, that advanced, and they've chosen to stay invisible and hidden. Why? Why not reveal themselves to us? Because they know us better than we know ourselves," I said. "They've seen every war, every genocide. They know exactly what we'd do if we found out about them. We'd try to exploit them, Doctor," Foster said quietly, "or destroy them out of fear. That's why the agreement exists," I said. "That's why governments know but keep it secret from everyone else. Because if regular people found out, there'd be panic, religious chaos, economic collapse, and then we'd try to attack them, which would be suicide." Dr. Foster added they control the oceans, all of them. If they wanted to, they could shut down global shipping in a day, disable every navy on Earth, cause tsunamis that would wipe out every coastal city. A thought occurred to me then. "Doc, what happens when we get back to the surface? What are they going to do with us?" His face went pale. "We know too much now," he said. "We've seen their city, met them face to face. Learned things that governments have been hiding for decades. That makes us a liability to the secret." "You think they'll kill us?" I asked. "Not kill," he said, "but silence, definitely. We signed those papers. They made it very clear what would happen if we talked. I don't think we're going home to normal lives." He was right, and I'd been trying not to think about it, but the truth was obvious. We'd be controlled. Monitored, probably separated from each other. Rachel wouldn't understand why I'd changed, why I couldn't talk about where I'd been. My kids would grow up with a father who was there physically but absent in every other way. On the third day, as we approached the surface, Reynolds called all 12 of us to the conference room. "Gentlemen," he started, "in about 6 hours we'll surface. when we do our lives as we've known them are over. What we've seen down there is classified beyond anything you've dealt with before in your careers. He paused, looking at each of us in turn. When we dock, you'll be separated immediately, debriefed individually. It will take weeks, maybe months. They'll record every detail, every observation, and then they'll make you understand what will happen if you ever speak about this to anyone. What about our families? Rodriguez asked. I knew he had a pregnant wife waiting for him back home. You'll be allowed to see them eventually, Reynolds said, but your relationships will be monitored, your phone calls recorded, your mail read. Some of you might find it easier to distance yourselves from loved ones rather than put them at risk. Why? Peterson asked. Why not just tell people the truth? Because people can't handle the truth, Reynolds replied. Think about it. What happens when 7 billion people find out that we're not alone on this planet? That there's a civilization in the oceans that's older and more advanced than us? That we're essentially living in someone else's backyard? He brought up a map of the world's oceans on the screen. 71% of Earth's surface is water, he said. We control none of it. Every ship that crosses an ocean does so because they allow it. Every submarine is being watched by them. We are not the dominant species on this planet. We never were. The room was silent. Everything we'd been taught about human progress and dominance was wrong. We were children playing in a sandbox while adults watched from nearby. So what do we do? I asked. Just go back to our lives pretending we don't know. That's exactly what we do, Reynolds said. We keep the secret. We carry the weight of it for the rest of our lives because the alternative is chaos, global panic, probably war. And if we go to war with them, we lose badly. How do we live with this? I asked quietly. Reynolds looked at me with those tired eyes that had seen too much. Poorly, Commander, he said. We live with it poorly. But we live, and we keep the secret because that's our duty now, not to our country, but to the human race. 6 hours later, we surfaced. The sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and reds. After a week in the depths, that sunset looked like heaven itself. But I knew I'd never look at the ocean the same way again. The water wasn't just empty space anymore. It was someone else's territory, someone else's home. 3 black helicopters were waiting when we docked. Men in suits everywhere. We were separated immediately. I didn't see any of my team members again for 3 months. The debriefing was brutal. 8 hours a day, every day for 5 weeks straight. They wanted every detail. They asked the same questions 50 different ways. They recorded everything, made me draw pictures, describe colors I didn't have names for, explained telepathic conversations that couldn't be put into words. And then came the threats, polite, carefully worded, but unmistakable. My family's names mentioned casually, details about my kids' schools, Rachel's daily routine. The message was clear as crystal. We know where everyone you love is at all times. Keep the secret or they pay the price. When they finally let me go home, I'd lost 20 pounds. Rachel cried when she saw me, said I looked like I'd been through hell. She wasn't wrong about that. I told her it had been a difficult training exercise, that I couldn't talk about the details. She believed me because she had to, because the alternative was that her husband had become a stranger. I stayed in the Navy for 6 more years after that mission, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I'd seen the truth behind the curtain. I knew that all our military might, all our technology, it meant nothing compared to what lived in the depths. We were tolerated guests on this planet, not masters of it. 3 of my team members didn't make it through those first few years. Thomas Jenkins was found hanging in his garage in 1996. David Rodriguez died in a car accident in 1998. James Cooper just disappeared in 1999. 3 men dead in 5 years, all from the same 12-man team, but nobody investigated because nobody knew we'd all been on that mission together. Dr. Foster had a breakdown in 1997. He'd been found in his office ranting about underwater cities. He spent 3 months in a psychiatric facility. When he got out, he quit marine biology entirely. Moved to Montana. Last I heard, he was teaching high school science. His career destroyed by what he knows. I've thought about suicide more times than I'd like to admit. What stopped me was spite. They wanted us all dead or silent. Staying alive became an act of defiance, but living with this knowledge changes you fundamentally. You can't trust anyone fully. You can't engage honestly with the world. You watch people stress about politics or money or relationships, and part of you wants to scream that none of that matters. There are beings in the ocean that could end us all. Rachel tried so hard to understand what had happened to me. The first week I was back, she kept asking if I was okay. I'd give her the same answer every time. Classified, can't talk about it, everything's fine. But my hands would shake when I said it. After a month, she sat me down. Marcus, she said with tears in her eyes, I don't know what happened to you out there, but you're not the same man who left. Please talk to me, God, how I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't because telling her would put her at risk, so I lied to the woman I loved more than anything. It's just stress, honey, I said. I just need some time to readjust to normal life. I'll be fine. She didn't believe me, but she loved me enough to let it go. My relationship with my kids suffered terribly. I was physically present, but emotionally absent. My son Michael asked me once, when he was 15, why I seemed so sad all the time. Dad, you've been tired for 5 years, he said. When are you going to rest? I didn't have an answer for him, because the truth was I'd never rest. Not until I died and took the secret with me to the grave. The worst moments were when I'd see something on TV about ocean exploration. Scientists talking excitedly about discovering a new species at 3,000 meters depth. I'd watch these experts who'd spent their whole lives studying the ocean, and I'd think you have no idea. You're looking at 5% of the picture, and the space programs. God, watching the space programs made me physically ill. All those billions of dollars pointed upward at the stars. NASA, and making announcements about Mars colonies. Billionaires competing to build rockets, and everyone asking, why are we going to space when we haven't explored our own oceans? I knew why. We were running, making an escape plan, building a backup location, because the people in charge knew we didn't really control our own planet. If things went wrong, if the agreement broke down, we needed somewhere else to go. Mars wasn't about scientific curiosity. It was a lifeboat, but I couldn't say any of that. Could only sit in my living room watching the news while Rachel made dinner and pretend everything was normal. I started drinking more than I should have. The alcohol dulled things, made the knowledge a little less sharp. My faith took a beating too. I'd been raised Baptist, but how do you reconcile that with what I'd seen? The Bible says God created man in his image, that humans are special, but I'd met beings that were older than Christianity, older than humans, period. Did God create them too? Were they part of some plan? I didn't have answers, so I stopped going to church, stopped praying. Rachel passed away in 2022. Cancer, it happened fast. I held her hand at the end, told her I loved her, told her I was sorry for being such a lousy husband. She squeezed my hand and smiled, said she understood. I hope wherever you're going you find peace, she whispered. You never found it here. She died thinking I was traumatized by war. She never knew the truth. And part of me is grateful because at least she died in a world that made sense to her. After she was gone, I sold our house, moved to Tennessee, tried to find some quiet in my final years, but the knowledge didn't get quieter. If anything, it got louder as I aged. The idea of taking this to my grave started to feel wrong, like I'd be complicit in the lie. Then last year, the cancer diagnosis, lung cancer stage 4. Doctor gave me maybe a year with treatment. 6 months without. I chose treatment not because I'm afraid of dying, but because I wanted enough time to do this, to tell my story, to break the silence. Over the years, I started noticing patterns. Things that didn't make the news, or if they did, were explained away with official stories. Once you know what to look for, you start seeing the cover-up everywhere. Take submarine incidents. The USS Scorpion in 1968. Official story was mechanical failure, but I've talked to old-timers. The Scorpion was operating in deep water off the Azores, surveying unusual sonar contacts. It disappeared completely. When they found the wreckage 5 months later, it was scattered in a way that didn't match any known failure mode. Could have been them. Could have been the Scorpion went somewhere it shouldn't have and was eliminated to protect the secret. The timing fits, the location fits, and the pattern of silence that followed fits perfectly. Then there's the Soviet submarine K-129 that sank in 1968. same year. The CA spent millions on Project Azorian to recover it. Official story was they wanted Soviet codes and nuclear technology, but think about the timing. 2 submarines, 1 American and 1 Soviet, both lost in deep water the same year, both in areas where unusual activity had been reported. What if both incidents were related? What if both nations lost subs to the same thing? The governments never talked to each other officially, but I'd bet back channel communications happened. That's how the agreement works. I started keeping a file after I retired. Just newspaper clippings about ocean-related incidents that seemed off, drilling platforms with catastrophic failures in deep water, research vessels that lost power mysteriously, sonar operators reporting contacts that were dismissed as equipment malfunctions. Small things individually, but collectively they formed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. In 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico. 11 men died. The official investigation blamed faulty equipment and corporate negligence. But what they didn't report was that in the weeks before the explosion, several crew members had reported strange sonar readings. Unusual vibrations, equipment malfunctions that seemed almost deliberate. The Deepwater Horizon was drilling in 5,000 feet of water, deep enough. What if they got too close to something they shouldn't have? What if the explosion wasn't entirely an accident, but a warning? I can't prove it, but I remember what the beings showed us. They'd been monitoring human activity in the oceans for decades. They knew about every drilling platform. And they'd made it clear they had limits to their patience. Another pattern I noticed was the systematic defunding of deep ocean research. NASA's budget dwarfs NOAA's budget by a factor of 5 or 6 to 1. We spend more money in a year on space exploration than we've spent in the last 50 years on deep ocean exploration combined. And when deep sea research does get funded, it's carefully controlled. Research vessels are only allowed in certain areas. There are vast zones that are off limits officially for military reasons or environmental protection, but I know better. Those zones are where the cities are, where the agreement says we're not allowed to go. I've watched documentary filmmakers like James Cameron dive to the Mariana Trench, and I've wondered what they were really told before they went down. His dive was heavily coordinated with the Navy. You think they'd let him go down blind without briefing him? His public statements afterward were all about the barrenness of the deep ocean floor, but I saw an interview where he looked uncomfortable, chose his words carefully, and when asked if he'd go back, he said once was enough. A guy who spent his career pushing boundaries, and one dive to the deepest point on Earth was enough. That tells me something. The Chinese have been making noise about ocean exploration lately, building new deep-sea submersibles. And interestingly, they've been having a lot of technical difficulties, equipment failures, communication breakdowns. One of their submersibles got stranded at 7,000 meters. The crew came back talking about hallucinations. The Chinese government classified the whole incident, hallucinations, that's what they call it, when someone sees something the government doesn't want acknowledged. Dr. Foster and I were both asked repeatedly if we'd experienced hallucinations. They wanted us to doubt our own senses, make people question their sanity, and they'll be less likely to talk. But I know what I saw. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people around the world who have encountered something they can't explain in the deep ocean. Submersible pilots, sonar operators, deep-sea fishermen, most of them have been debriefed, threatened, paid off, or silenced. I've thought about trying to contact some of them, but that's dangerous. The moment 2 or 3 of us start coordinating, we become a conspiracy. And conspiracies get shut down hard. Look at what happened to Peterson. I've stayed alive this long by staying isolated, by keeping my head down, but I've also been careful to document everything. I've got copies of my notes hidden in different locations. Insurance in case something happens to me. If I die under suspicious circumstances, instructions will be triggered to release everything to multiple media outlets. They can kill me, but they can't kill the truth. Not anymore. Sometimes I wonder if they're disappointed in us, the beings I mean. They've given us space, stayed hidden, honored the agreement for decades, and what have we done? We've polluted the oceans with plastic and chemicals. We've overfished to the point of ecosystem collapse. We've acidified the water with carbon dioxide. We've treated the ocean like a garbage dump. If I were them, I'd be losing patience. I'd be wondering if this agreement was a mistake. They have the technology, they have the numbers, and they have millions of years of perspective that makes our entire civilization look like a brief chaotic moment. That's what scares me most, not that they exist. Not that they're more advanced, but that we're running out of time to prove we deserve to share this planet with them. Every oil spill, every deep-sea mining operation, every sonar blast that disrupts their communications. It's pushing us closer to a breaking point, and when that break comes, it won't be a negotiation, it'll be a reckoning. I used to think the governments were wrong to keep this secret, that people had a right to know. But now, after watching human behavior for 30 years, I'm not so sure. Maybe the secret is all that's keeping us safe. Maybe if people knew they wouldn't be careful, they'd be terrified, and terrified people do stupid things. You might be wondering how something this big stays secret, how governments around the world could possibly coordinate to hide something of this magnitude. The answer is simple and terrifying. They don't have a choice. The agreement isn't just between the United States and these beings. It's global. Every nation with a significant naval presence knows. Russia knows. China knows. The UK, France, India, Japan, they all know. And they all understand that if the secret gets out, it could trigger global panic, economic collapse, religious crisis, wars fought over how to respond, so they cooperate, not openly of course. There are no UN resolutions about undersea civilizations. But there are back channels, secret meetings, protocols that everyone follows without acknowledging why. I learned about some of this during my debriefing. There's an organization referred to internally as the Committee. Representatives from about 20 nations meeting quarterly. Their job is to manage incidents, coordinate responses, ensure the agreement holds. When something happens like a submarine encounter or a fishing vessel seeing something it shouldn't, the committee decides how to handle it. What story to tell, who needs to be silenced, what evidence needs to disappear. The committee has been operating since the late 1940s, right after World War II. That's when deep-sea technology advanced enough that we started bumping into them regularly. Before that, encounters were rare. The first official contact happened in 1952. A French bathyscaphe doing research in the Mediterranean went deeper than planned and encountered one of their cities. The crew came back terrified. The French government reached out quietly to the Americans and British. That led to the first coordinated deep-sea expedition. Over the next decade, multiple nations conducted secret expeditions, mapping where these cities were located, trying to understand the extent of this civilization, and what they learned scared them enough to establish the agreement. The beings made it clear, stay on the surface. Don't interfere with the deep ocean, and we'll coexist peacefully. Cross those boundaries and there would be consequences. The committee's biggest challenge isn't keeping governments in line. Most nations understand the stakes. The real problem is private industry. Corporations that want to mine the ocean floor. Billionaires funding their own deep-sea exploration. Companies drilling for oil in deeper and deeper waters. These entities don't answer to governments the same way militaries do. And they are motivated by profit rather than security. That's why you see so many accidents involving deep-sea drilling platforms. The Deepwater Horizon wasn't the only one. The pattern is clear. Go too deep in the wrong place and something bad happens. Equipment fails, structures collapse, people die. It's enforcement of the agreement by the only beings with the power to enforce it. The tech industry is becoming a problem too. Companies like Google and SpaceX have massive resources. Some have expressed interest in ocean exploration. The committee watches these companies closely, uses regulatory pressure to steer them away from dangerous projects, but it's getting harder. These billionaires don't take orders well. That's part of why the space race has been encouraged so heavily. It's a redirection of resources. Get the ambitious billionaires focused on Mars and the Moon, places where they can't accidentally stumble onto something that would reveal the truth. Better to have Elon Musk spending billions on rockets than on deep-sea submarines. China is the wild card. They're aggressive about ocean exploration, and they're not always cooperative with the committee. The Chinese government knows about the beings, but they think they can handle the situation on their own terms. That arrogance has led to several incidents, including the loss of at least 2 Chinese submarines that were never publicly acknowledged. The financial cost of maintaining this secret is staggering. Billions spent on monitoring equipment, on payoffs to witnesses, on funding cover stories. The committee has access to black budget funds from multiple nations. It's one of the largest continuous expenditures in history, and almost nobody knows it exists. But money can't solve every problem. The biggest threat to the secret isn't technology or corporations. It's simple probability. The more people who go into the deep ocean, the more likely someone will see something and won't stay quiet. With every passing year, with every advance in technology that makes deep-sea exploration cheaper and more accessible, the odds of the secret holding decrease. The committee knows this. They're preparing for the day when the truth comes out, but they're also hoping that day never comes. In the last 10 years, things have changed. The beings are becoming less careful about staying hidden, or maybe they're deliberately making themselves more visible. Either way, the incidents are increasing in frequency. It's like they're preparing for something, or warning us about something. I track these incidents obsessively now. Every unexplained ocean phenomenon, every strange sonar contact, the pattern is unmistakable. Something is building toward a critical point. Take the mass whale beachings. They've been happening more frequently in the last decade. Hundreds of whales throwing themselves onto shores all over the world. The official explanation is usually sonar interference from naval exercises. But I've mapped these beachings against known restricted zones. There's a correlation. The whales are fleeing from something in the deep water. Then there's the mysterious sounds. In 1997, NOAA detected an ultra-low frequency sound they called the bloop. Picked up by hydrophones thousands of miles apart, louder than any known animal could produce. They claimed it was ice calving, but that explanation doesn't match the frequency pattern or source location. What it matches is the communication frequencies we detected on our mission. The beings were sending a message, broadcasting something powerful enough to be heard across entire ocean basins. There have been other sounds since then, all explained away as ice or geological activity. But the patterns, the frequencies, they're too organized to be random. They're communications, and they're getting louder, more frequent. Climate change is affecting them too. The ocean is warming, acidifying, filling with plastic. Their environment is being degraded by our activities, and they're not happy about it. Some of the recent incidents might be responses to that degradation. Warnings that we're pushing too far. I've noticed a pattern in ocean temperatures near known deep-sea cities. The water is consistently a few degrees warmer, suggesting massive energy output from below. As we've increased our carbon emissions, these thermal signatures have become more pronounced. They're using more energy. It indicates they're being forced to respond to changes we're causing. The committee is worried. I can tell from the increase in military activity in certain areas, the expansion of restricted zones. They're preparing for something. There's been talk, rumors really, about attempts at communication. The committee supposedly has people who have learned to interface with the beings' telepathic communication. These contacts happen rarely, under controlled conditions, always classified above top secret. But according to the rumors, the beings are growing impatient. They're tired of our pollution, our noise, our expansion into deeper waters. The agreement is straining. What happens if it breaks? Do the beings reveal themselves openly? Do they start enforcing their boundaries more aggressively? Or do they decide that coexistence isn't working and take more drastic action? I've seen what they're capable of, the technology, the power, the sheer scale of their civilization. If they wanted to devastate human coastal populations, they could do it in hours. We're completely vulnerable to them, and we always have been. The only thing protecting us is their restraint. But how long will that restraint last? I've got maybe 6 months left. This cancer is eating through me faster than they expected. Part of me is ready to go, but another part is terrified of dying with the secret, of taking my story to the grave where it'll do no good. That's why I'm writing this. That's why I'm breaking the silence, because somebody needs to know. Somebody needs to understand that the world is not what we think it is. That the ocean is not empty. They can come for me now if they want. I'm dying anyway, but the truth is out there now, and truth has a way of surviving. I'm under no illusions about how my testimony will be received. The committee will work to discredit me. They'll release my medical records showing cancer in my brain, suggest that I'm delusional. They'll point to my history of depression and drinking, paint me as an unstable individual. And maybe some people will believe them. Maybe most people will dismiss this as the ravings of a dying old man, but some won't. Some will read this and recognize the truth. Some will start asking questions, connecting dots, demanding answers, and that's all I need. Not everyone, just enough to keep the truth alive. I've left evidence, documents, photographs, testimony from others, all hidden in different locations with instructions for release if anything happens to me. The committee can silence me, but they can't silence everything I've prepared. To my children, I'm sorry. Sorry for being a distant father. Sorry for the secrets I kept. None of it was your fault. I was carrying something too heavy. I hope you can understand, and I hope you'll be safe when the truth emerges. Stay away from coastlines if things start to change rapidly. To Rachel, even though you're gone, you were right about everything. I was dealing with something I couldn't talk about. I never stopped loving you. I hope you found the peace I never could find here. To the other survivors from that mission, I know I'm breaking protocol. I know this puts you at risk, but we've been silent long enough. The world needs to know. To the committee, you can't stop this. Even if you kill me tomorrow, the truth will emerge. You're fighting against time and probability. And you're losing. Every year, more people go deeper. More technology becomes available. Eventually, someone will capture undeniable proof, or the beings themselves will decide to stop hiding. To the beings in the deep, if somehow this reaches you, we're not all blind. Some of us know you're there. Some of us respect what you are. Some of us want peaceful coexistence, want to learn from you. We're a young species, still learning, still making mistakes, but we're capable of growth. Please give us the chance to prove it, and to everyone else. To the people who will read this and wonder if it's true, look at the ocean differently now. Understand that 71% of Earth's surface isn't empty. It's someone's home. When you see news about mysterious sounds or unexplained sound, our contacts or submarines having close calls, remember this testimony. Connect the dots. Ask why we're spending billions on Mars instead of exploring our own planet. Question the official explanations that don't quite make sense. The truth is out there in the deep places, waiting in the dark, and whether we're ready or not, that truth is coming to the surface. We can meet it with open minds and open hearts. Or we can meet it with fear and denial, but we can't avoid it anymore. The time of hiding is ending. The time of truth is beginning. I've done what I can, told my story, left my testimony. Now it's up to you. All of you to decide what to do with it, believe it or dismiss it, investigate or ignore. But whatever you do, remember this, we're not alone on this planet. We never were. And the sooner we accept that truth, the better our chances of surviving what comes next. My name is Captain Rebel. I served my country for 24 years. I kept their secret for 30 more. And now at the end of my life, I'm choosing truth over silence. Whatever happens next, at least I'll die knowing I tried to do the right thing. That I gave humanity a chance to prepare, to understand, to choose its own path forward with full knowledge instead of comfortable ignorance. The secret they hide in the depths isn't just about beings in the ocean. It's about who we are as a species, how we treat our planet, and whether we're capable of sharing space with others. That secret has cost too many lives, destroyed too many people, maintained too many lies. It ends here, it ends now, the truth is out. And I pray to whatever God might be listening that we're ready for it. Because ready or not, it's coming. The abyss knows our secrets, and soon we'll know theirs. If you found Captain Rebel's testimony compelling, please share this story with others who deserve to know the truth. Subscribe and turn on notifications because more classified testimonies from military insiders are coming soon. The deep ocean holds secrets that could change everything we thought we knew about our world and humanity's place in it.